Good morning, everyone. First thing first, we are going to look at the executive summary. This report compares ethical issues in university admissions by examining racial and ethnic discrimination in Malaysia and the United States through the UiTM cardiothoracic surgery controversy and the US affirmative action ban. Using deontological, utilitarian, and justice-based ethics, the study highlights how differing state philosophies shape ethical outcomes in higher education. In Malaysia, strict adherence to Article 153 reflects a deontological duty, but creates a moral conflict when racial exclusivity hinders urgent healthcare needs, raising concerns from a utilitarian perspective about the loss of societal welfare. In contrast, in the United States, shift towards race-neutral, colorblind admissions has resulted in declining Black and Latino enrollment in elite universities, demonstrating that passive neutrality fails to achieve substantive equality or address systemic barriers. Now I will summarize the ethical issues in the university admissions in Malaysia and the US. In Malaysia, the 2024 UiTM cardiothoracic surgery controversy created a moral dilemma. Students opposed admitting non-Bumiputra trainees based on Article 153, prioritizing constitutional duty over urgent healthcare needs. This clashes with utilitarian ethics, as thousands of patients face delayed treatments. The protest also raised questions about social responsibility, since the right to dissent was used to promote exclusion during a humanitarian crisis. In the US, the 2024 affirmative action ban led to declining Black and Latino enrollment at elite universities. Race-neutral policies failed to overcome systemic barriers, causing a distributive justice failure and threatening the diversity and also cultural competence of the future workforce. Overall, both cases show that rigid legal or colorblind policies can unintentionally exclude talent and undermine social justice.
Good day everyone, my name is Yeo Chun Jie and now we are moving on to section 3.0 local issue overview. Today we are focusing on a major national debate that surfaced in 2024, which is the UiTM cardiothoracic surgery controversy. This case is a perfect example of the tension between long-standing institutional policies and the urgent evolving needs of our nation's healthcare system. We will start by looking at how a shortage of specialist doctors turned into a national ethical debate. So as we know, UiTM is a public university that operates under a Bumiputra only admission policy, tied to Article 153 of the Federal Constitution. However, in 2024, Malaysia faced a critical shortage of cardiothoracic surgeons, leading to heart patients being stuck on a waiting list for months. Because the UiTM-IJM partnership was the only accredited local training route, a proposal was made to temporarily admit to non-Bumiputra trainees to speed out the production of specialists. However, this proposal was met in immediate resistance. Students organized a bareback protest and used the hashtag Mahasiswa UiTM Bantah to signal their opposition. They argued that any admission of non-Bumiputra, even temporarily, will compromise the university identity. Ultimately, the government stepped in and reaffirms the Bumiputra-only policy, which brings us to the core ethical questions of this case. So now let's break down to ethical issues from this case. First, we have legal rights versus institutional tradition. On one hand, students see the admission policy as a protected constitutional right. On the other, the nation's needs are changing. The ethical tension here is, should an institutional tradition remain rigid even when the nation is facing a crisis that affects every citizen's right to healthcare? The second issue is public health versus racial policy. This is a clash between protecting a specific group's educational privilege and the universal principle of saving life. Since racial exclusivity brought a practical solution to a surgeon shortage, the ethical dilemma is clear, which is, does group protection outweigh the human right to life and public welfare? And lastly, we examine freedom of expression versus social responsibility. While the students have the right to protest, their movement was aimed at defending exclusion during a national health emergency. The ethical question we must ask is, should the right to protest for a specific demographic interest override our collective responsibility to ensure that the healthcare system is functional for everyone? So this case leaves us with a difficult reality. How do we honor the past while trying to build a healthier future for all Malaysians? So that's all for me.
My name is Shatik Lim, entry number 298458, and now I will discuss an important internet issue in the United States, the aftermath of the affirmative actions ban in higher education following the year 2023. In June 2023, the US Supreme Court ruled in students of fair admissions with the Harvard that race-conscious admissions violated the Equal Protection Clause, effectively banning affirmative actions. Universities were therefore required to adapt race-neutral or colorblind admissions starting in the 2024 academic years, with the aim of promoting merit-based selection. However, the impact of this policy became clear with the release of Class of 2028 enrollment data in August 2024. Elite University experienced a sharp decline in racial diversity. At MIT, Black student enrollment fell from 15% to 5%, while Latino enrollment dropped from 16% to 11%. Similarly, Black enrollment at Amherst College declined from 11% to 3%. These outcomes show that removing racial in admission had reduced campus diversity. Race-natural alternatives such as income-based and geography criteria have proven ineffective as socioeconomic status does not fully reflect racial advantage. This shift has contributed to the risk restrictions of higher education, creating a pipeline problem that limits minority representation in professions like medicine, law, and leadership. In conclusion, although the ban aimed to promote fairness, early evidence indicates that it is reinforced exceeding inequalities and raised serious ethical concerns about justice in higher education. Now, I will explain the key ethical issues arising from the affirmative action ban. First, the ban has contributed to resegregation in higher education after race-conscious admissions were removed. Early universities experienced a sharp decline in Black and Latino enrollment, resulting in campus becoming less racially diverse. Although admissions policy appear natural, they fail to address long-standing structural inequalities in education, such as unequal school funding and access to academic resources. Ethically, this shows that formal inequality treating everyone the same and can lead to successive inequality where disadvantaged groups are excluded in practice. Second, there are clear limitations to race-natural admissions policies. Universities turn to income-based and geography criteria as an alternative, assuming this would preserve diversity. However, socioeconomic status does not fully capture racial disadvantage, and this strategy often ends up benefiting students from already privileged backgrounds. This raised an important ethical issues. Equal treatment does not guarantee equal opportunity, especially when historical and systematic barriers remain unaddressed. Finally, the ban was the pipeline problem. A few minority students gain entry to elite universities. Over time, this narrowed the talent pipeline and reduced diversity in professions such as medicine, law, and leadership. A lack of representation can weaken trust, service quality, and fairness. Particularly in fields like healthcare, where cultural understanding is essential, and empathy, socials bears the ethical cost and reduce professional diversity and limited social mobility. In conclusion, while the affirmative action ban was intended to promote fairness and meritocracy, its real-world outcomes raise serious ethical concerns about inequalities, representations, and social justice in higher education and beyond. And that is for me. Thank you.
Okay, hello, my name is Teo Singh. Now we move to section 5.0, comparison between local and international issues. We begin by examining the context. Locally, Malaysia faces Bumiputera only admissions at UiTM during a national healthcare crisis. Internationally, the USA is dealing with a ban on affirmative action in university admissions. This leads us to the main ethical dilemma. In Malaysia, is a tension between institutional tradition and urgent public health needs. In the USA, the dilemma is between race-neutral fairness and minority exclusions. Looking at the policy approach, Malaysia adopts racial protectionism through an exclusive admission policy, while the USA enforces a race-neutral or combined admission policy. The key stakeholders differ as well. In Malaysia, they include heart patients, medical trainees, UiTM students, and the government. In the USA, the stakeholders are Black and Latino students, universities, and the future workforce. The immediate impact of these policies is significant. Malaysia faces a shortage of cardiothoracic specialists and delayed surgeries. Meanwhile, the USA experiences a sharp decline in minority enrollment. Over the long term, Malaysia risks social division and healthcare inefficiency, while the USA faces a pipeline problem and reduced diversity in professions. The last is the core ethical issues. In Malaysia, group-based protection overrides public welfare. In the USA, formal equalities ends up producing substantive inequality.
Hi, my name is Christine Lim and my ID is 29785. The UiTM temporary admissions policy can be explained using three ethical views. So, first is the utilitarian reasons, which focus on the greatest good for the greatest numbers. It's allowing non-Bumiputra trainings that help increase the number of medical specialists. This improves the healthcare service and save more lives. Even though there is some group that may disagree, but the benefit to public health is much greater. In the long run, society gains more from a stronger healthcare system than from a strict exclusivity. Second is the right-based approach. Please look at the different rights in the conflict. Patients have the right to life and timely medical care. At the same time, non-Bumiputra trainees have the right to fair access to education. Bumiputra students and UiTM also have the right to the institutional protections under the existing policies. So the ethical challenge is deciding which the right should come first. In this case, the right to life and healthcare is the most fundamental. Third is the justice-based ethics, which focus on fairness. Everyone should have the equal access to life-saving treatment. Limiting the training based on identity reduces the number of doctors and affect the patients. A merit-based system ensures that capable doctors are trained to meet the urgent needs, while UiTM Bumiputra role is important. During a healthcare crisis, the temporary exceptions are fair and necessary. Overall, each ethical theory shows that public safety, human rights, and fairness all support the temporary policy.
Okay, Okay, now we move to section 7.0, application of ethical theories or concepts in international issues. We begin with the ontological ethics, which focuses on moral duties and rules, not outcomes, and requires treating individuals as end in themselves with inherent moral worth. While critics argue that race-based admission violate equal moral duties, as fairness is seen as applying the same rules and objective criteria to all applicants. However, Kantian ethics require rules to reflect real-world conditions, as equal treatment can be unjust when starting points are unequal due to structural disadvantage. Therefore, ignoring social context reduces individuals to abstract statistics, risking violations of human dignity and undermining genuine equality of opportunity. Next theory is utilitarianism, which judges actions based on outcomes and overall social benefits, aiming to maximize the greatest good for the greatest number. In practice, post-ban admissions show declining racial diversity, weakening educational qualities, and reducing cross-cultural learning. This matters because elite universities serve as leadership pipelines, and exclusion creates long-term gaps in minority representation and public trust. Although short-term social harm may occur, long-term harm includes segregation, reduced mobility, and lower overall social welfare, meaning the ban fails utilitarian standards. Finally, we consider Rawls' theory of justice, which focuses on fairness and equal opportunity, arguing that a just society must give everyone a fair chance regardless of background. According to Rawls, inequality is acceptable when only when it benefits the least advantaged. This is known as the difference principle. University admissions distribute important social and economic opportunities, but merit-based criteria often reflect wealth and privilege rather than ability. As a result, race-neutral policy disadvantage minority students, reduce diversity and social mobility, and prioritize procedural equality over substantive fairness, making the ban morally unjust under Rawls' theory.
In the conclusion part, there are two contrasting higher education cases from Malaysia and the United States. Although they came from different legal and historical backgrounds, both demonstrate that inflexible admission policies can lead to serious ethical consequences. In the UiTM case, the ethical dilemma lies between preserving constitutional tradition and responding to urgent healthcare needs. While the policy is legally grounded, ethically it risks prioritizing identity over collective right to health. In the United States, removing affirmative action aimed to promote equality, but in practice, it produced unequal outcomes. The decline in minority enrollment shows that race-neutral approaches fail to address long-standing structural disadvantages. When we compare both cases, we see that neither extreme works ethically. Over protection and total neutrality both risk excluding capable individuals and weakening social outcomes. In conclusion, ethical governance higher education must adaptable and more informed. Policies should serve society by balancing fairness, inclusivity, and the broader public good. In the conclusion part, there are two contrasting higher education cases from Malaysia and the United States. Although they came from different legal and historical backgrounds, both demonstrate that inflexible admission policies can lead to serious ethical consequences. In the UiTM case, the ethical dilemma lies between preserving constitutional tradition and responding to urgent healthcare needs. While the policy is legally grounded, ethically it risks prioritizing identity over collective right to health. In the United States, removing affirmative action aimed to promote equality, but in practice, it produced unequal outcomes. The decline in minority enrollment shows that race-neutral approaches fail to address long-standing structural disadvantages. When we compare both cases, we see that neither extreme works ethically. Over protection and total neutrality both risk excluding capable individuals and weakening social outcomes. In conclusion, ethical governance higher education must adaptable and more informed. Policies. So there are 6 ethical lessons can be learned from the issue. First is ethical decision must prioritize human welfare over rigid legal or institutional tradition. Second, the UiTM case shows that inflexible policies during crises can undermine the right to live and healthcare. Third, the US case proves that formal equality does not guarantee justice when structural inequality persists. Fourth, both racial exclusivity and strict race neutrality lead to exclusion, loss of talent, and social harm. Fifth, democratic right must be balanced with social responsibility to maintain a moral legitimacy. Last, ethical higher education governance require flexible, inclusive, and context-sensitive policies that serve the common good. Thank you. So there are 6 ethical lessons can be learned from the issue. First is ethical decision must prioritize human welfare over rigid legal or institutional tradition. Second, the UiTM case shows that inflexible policies during crises can undermine the right to live and healthcare. Third, the US case proves that formal equality does not guarantee justice when structural inequality persists. Fourth, both racial exclusivity and strict race neutrality lead to exclusion, loss of talent, and social harm. Fifth, democratic right must be balanced with social responsibility to maintain a moral legitimacy. Last, ethical higher education governance require flexible, inclusive, and context-sensitive policies that serve the common good. Thank you. So there are 6 ethical lessons can be learned from the issue. First is ethical decision must prioritize human welfare over rigid legal or institutional tradition. Second, the UiTM case shows that inflexible policies during crises can undermine the right to live and healthcare. Third, the US case proves that formal equality does not guarantee justice when structural inequality persists. Fourth, both racial exclusivity and strict race neutrality lead to exclusion, loss of talent, and social harm.